When my boyfriend and I lived with his grandparents a few years ago, my boyfriend worked early morning hours. He would leave the house around 4 a.m. One winter morning, while it was still pitch black out, my boyfriend kissed me goodbye and I went to bed. A few minutes later, I heard continuous knocking at the front door. Immediately, I assumed it was him forgetting something and being half asleep. I ran up the stairs from my room to open the door, but as soon as I reached for it, his grandma called out to me from upstairs and said, "Don't open the door. That's not him." I froze and was too afraid to even peek through the front door window to see who it actually was. His grandma looked outside and said it was a man that had no jacket on. He then left our doorway and went on his way through the streets. My grandmother told me she knew immediately that it wasn't my boyfriend, because if it were actually him, he would have opened the door with his house key. He would not wake us this early in the morning. Not long after, a cop car cruised down our street with a light on, as if they were searching for someone. I was so terrified that I decided to sleep upstairs in the living room. Later on in the day, our grandma spoke to our neighbors and found out he was also pounding on everyone's doors on the same block. One of the neighbors a couple houses down is a huskier, taller guy and said he talked to the stranger through the door, asking what he wants. The man said someone is looking for him. They want to shoot him and that he needs to hide from them. I am more on the petite side, and at the time, I was about 19. I can't imagine what could have happened had I opened the door for him, or if my boyfriend's grandma wasn't there.
I was in Boy Scouts when I was a kid, and it was one of the high points of my life. I made hundreds of memories hanging around with my friends and going to scout camps. However, there was this one camp out that has me scared of the supernatural and has haunted me ever since. At first, when we got to the scout camp, I was so excited to see that they had a lake with all sorts of boats, such as kayaks and canoes, but the scoutmasters said we couldn't go into the water until the camp was all set up, and everyone had to turn in their physicals to the scout first aid director. My friends and I quickly turned in our physicals and put up our tent as fast as we could. It was sloppy looking, but hey, we were teenagers at the time. We walked over to the dock and wrote down on a clipboard that we were taking a canoe and a kayak. Charlie wanted to use the kayak because, in his words, it made him feel fast. Charlie was a little overweight and always wanted to go fast, so we took every chance he got. Jim and I took the canoe out together, because Jim was younger than Charlie and I still didn't know how to swim. So I took him under my wing and treated him like a younger brother. We paddled out to where a stick was pointing out of the water. Charlie grabbed the top of it and tried to pull on it, but it didn't budge, so he soon gave up on it. We continued to mess around it.
"Guys, check this out,"
Charlie said, as he paddled as fast as he could in the kayak and then tried to whirl around on a dime.
"Oh crap,"
he screamed, as the whole kayak capsized and splashed into the water. Jim and I started laughing our heads off, and I said with tears in my eyes,
"Hey Jim, who am I?" "Oh guys, check this out,"
I said, mockingly. Charlie was laughing along with us and responded while swimming over to our canoe.
"If you guys think it's so funny, why don't you guys come join me?"
He then grabbed the side of the boat and tried to tip us.
"Stop, Charlie, don't do it,"
Jim said in a terrified voice while holding to the sides of the canoe like a cat. Charlie didn't listen and jumped up on the side of the canoe, and it was like the kayak when it toppled over. The water was cold, but it wasn't terrible. However, Jim was freaking out, trying to tip the canoe right side up. One of the camp staff was on the dock and heard Jim's cries, and she quickly got into a canoe and began to paddle towards us. Before she got to us, Charlie started splashing around.
"What's wrong with you?"
I asked as I held on to the canoe.
"Something brushed up next to my leg, and it feels like my leg's on fire,"
Charlie said, as he treaded water trying to keep his head afloat. "That's strange," I said, as I became scared of what could be lurking under us. The camp staff pulled up beside us and helped Jim into her canoe. She then helped us turn our canoe right side up, and Charlie was able to get it back into his kayak. While she helped us to the camp, the staff member said, "You know, you guys should have waited before coming out here unsupervised by an adult. Also, you guys don't have any life jackets on, and that's really stupid, especially for the kids who can't swim." After hearing this, Jim looked down at his cheeks, turning a bright red. "You know, we were just excited to play on the lake," I said, while fiddling with the canoe paddle's handle. "Well, you can do plenty of that later, but for now, you all should head down to the fire pit. They're greeting all the new campers there, and are also telling some local urban legends," the camp staff said as she led us back to the dock. So after we put the canoe and kayak away, we began to get dressed, but as we were changing, Charlie came up to me and said while holding up his pant leg,
"What does this look like to you?"
I examined his leg, and it was not good, and responded, saying, "Well, that's awfully strange looking, Charlie. It looks like someone who was missing a finger branded you with their handprint. It looks burned into your skin."
"That's the same thing I thought it looked like too. I got it from whatever brushed up against my leg in the lake, and it itches real bad,"
Charlie said as he tried to keep himself from scratching.
"I'm glad whatever touched you didn't touch me, cause that sucker looks like it hurts,"
Jim said from across the tent. The Scoutmaster overheard our discussion and interrupted outside of our tents.
"Boys, y'all better hurry up and make it down to the fire pit on time with the rest of the troop, or we won't be in the running to receive the spirit stick at the end of the week. I'm headed down there right now, so don't be too far behind me." "Yes, sir,"
we all replied, and as the Scoutmaster walked off, I said, "Who even wants that spirit stick anyway? It's just a stick with junk on it from other troops."
"Scoutmasters like to have something to brag about to their troop when they meet other Scoutmasters,"
Charlie said with a chuckle.
"We'd best be on our way,"
Jim said as he unzipped the tents and crawled out. We followed beside him and all walked speedily down to the fire pit. That's where we saw the rest of our troop on the front log closest to the fire. I then thought to myself, annoyed, of course Jake, our patrol leader, would choose the front log out of all the other logs to sit on. That idiot always has to be in the spotlight, doesn't he? He's nothing more than a stuck-up rich mommy's boy. Before we were able to sit down with the rest of our troop, Jake walked up to the three of us and says,
"You're all late. I want our troop to look good so we can win that spirit stick at the end of the week, and you imbeciles are gonna mess it up for me."
The Scoutmaster then chimed in.
"Now, son, that's no way to talk to your fellow scouts. Apologize to them right this instant." "Dad, stay out of this. I'm teaching these slackers a lesson on what it means to be in my troop,"
Jake said, looking at his dad, who then, like a dog with a tail between its legs, backed off. It was sort of awkward, because all the other troops were behind us, sitting on logs, and could probably hear the conversation. "Don't get your panties in a wad. You're not our mom, so get off our backs," I said sternly, annoyed at Jake, who stood in front of where we were trying to sit down.
"I'm the patrol leader here, so yeah, I'm your mom while we're at camp," he said in a whiny tone. "You were only voted patrol leader because no one else wanted to be it, and your dad's the Scoutmaster," I said as I walked past him and sat down on the log with Jim and Charlie. Jake looked at us and he noticed all the people that sat behind us looking back at him, and he got embarrassed and sat down, but not before he gave us a dirty look. Soon, all of the camp staff gathered on the other side of the fire pit and welcomed us to the camp. The staff were then introduced, and all of them seemed pretty young, except the camp director and the head cook. The head cook looked like he'd been working here for ages, and had grayish hair and a thick, bushy mustache. I also noticed that he was missing the ring finger on his right hand. I leaned over to Charlie and said jokingly, "Look, he's missing a ring finger, just like the handprint on your leg. Maybe he's the one. You know, he put on a scuba diving suit and tried to get handsy with you in the lake." Jim chuckled, but Charlie replied unamused. "It's not funny, Nick. This thing stings pretty badly. If it hurts that much, you should probably get checked out by the camp doctor,"
Jim chimed in.
Yeah, I'll see if I can get better tonight, but if not, I'll see what they think it is,
Charlie said, as he gently placed his hand over the burned mark on his leg.
You guys need to shut up and pay attention,
Jake whispered harshly at us. I stuck my tongue at him and made a goofy face, and Jim saw what I was doing and joined me.
You guys are so immature,
Jake stated while shaking his head. It was around the time that the camp director said, "Alright, before we let you guys go settle in bed tonight, we're gonna have Reggie here tell you a local urban legend." The director then backed up while letting the camp cook come up to the front.
Of course that hairy man's name is Reggie. It fits him so perfectly,
I muttered jokingly to my friends. We laughed, and the man began to talk in a scratchy but somewhat surprisingly smooth voice, saying,
"This story I'm about to tell you was told to me by someone who had great-grandparents that grew up in a town not so far from here. The place was an old mining town, but as soon as the mines were shut down, everyone moved away, so it's now abandoned. Anyway, the story originates far before the mines ever went open, back when the Native Americans roamed this land freely. The story goes that in a tribe there was a man and a woman who loved each other more than the moon loved the stars, as it was said. However, there was another man in the tribe who was envious of him and wanted to be with a woman. So he devised a plan, and he killed the man by pushing him off of a cliff into the lake while on a hunting expedition."
Reggie paused briefly to try and add emphasis to his words.
"Well, when the woman found out about his death, she was in a state of immense mourning and vowed to never take another lover. When the man found out about this, he grew enraged, because no matter what he tried, she would not love him. So the only way he thought he could be saved from the guilt that he felt every time he saw her mourning face was to put her out of her misery. So in the dark of the night, he kidnapped her and took her to a lake. He paddled a canoe out into the middle and threw her body into the water. She, however, fought back and tried to grab onto the side of the canoe. The man took out his knife and stabbed at her hands so she would let go. While he did this, he cut off her ring finger, and she fell off into the water and drowned. The man left, not knowing that the finger was still inside the boat, and it's how his tribe found out that he had killed her. Now it is said that she haunts the lake, mourning for her lover to save her and looking for her lost ring finger."
Reggie stopped and looked at all of us as his face lost all expression as he said,
"Never go to the far end of the lake, and I'm not joking with any of you about this. This could mean the difference between life and death. I say it again. Do not go to the far end of the lake." I marked it with a stick poking out in the water, which I anchored to the lake's floor, so you guys know where not to go. The story goes that if you disturb her while her body rests, she'll mark you. That mark is of her hand with the missing finger, and if you do not appease her spirit, she will come after you in 4 days you were marked and drag you to the bottom of the lake during the night.
No one said anything, and there was a dead silence, and nothing but the crackling of the fire made a sound. After hearing this, Jim and I looked at Charlie, who was stiller than a statue. My blood ran cold thinking about the elephant in the room. Jim then broke the silence as he mumbled,
"Wasn't there a stick that you were playing with in the lake today?"
Charlie looked at us, trembling, and said,
Yeah, I tried to pull it out. If you guys remember, this is really scary, and I'm not even joking around here."
I then tried to cheer Charlie up by saying,
"This is probably just a prank he's trying to play on us. If it is, he went overboard by burning this handprint into my leg,"
Charlie said as he gazed at the red mark. The camp director then took over again and wished everyone a fun camp experience as they set us off to our campsites. We soon went to bed, and as we were falling asleep, I whispered to Charlie, "Reggie did say that she would take you to the bottom of the lake if you didn't appease her. Maybe there's a way to appease her somehow."
Hopefully,
Charlie said, worryingly. We then all hunkered down for the night, and none of us slept very well. We woke up early the next morning to go and see if Reggie could tell us any more about how to get rid of the mark on Charlie's leg. As we walked over there, Charlie said to us after examining his leg,
"Hey guys, one of the fingers disappeared. It's not marked in my leg anymore."
"Well, that's a good sign. Maybe Reggie will be able to get the whole thing off," I said as we walked along. So we got to his small, creaky cabin and Jim knocked on the door as we all heard a grumbly voice say,
"Who's there?"
come from within.
"We need help, sir. We gotta solve a problem,"
I responded back. Reggie replied, somewhat annoyed,
"Take it up with the camp director. It's not my job to deal with your problems." It's pretty serious, sir,"
Charlie chimed in as he rolled up his pant leg. Reggie opened the door and looked at us through the screen and said,
"And now what's so serious enough that a cook needs to get—"
He stopped as he noticed the mark on Charlie's leg.
"Where did you get that?"
he asked intensely as he ushered us into his dingy cabin.
Yesterday afternoon, right before we went down to the campfire pit. We were just playing out in the lake,"
Charlie said, very concerningly.
"Next to the stick pointed out in the water I warned you all to stay away from."
Reggie asked as he looked through some old drawers.
Yeah, but it was before we knew about your warning,"
Charlie responded with his hands deep in his pockets. Reggie pulled an old wrinkly piece of paper out of a drawer on the shelf and handed it to Charlie, saying,
"There's only one way to appease her, but you have to have the guts to go through with it."
"How do you know about her so much?" I asked as Charlie grabbed the piece of paper from him. Reggie lifted up his hand and he was missing a ring finger, as we had noticed earlier at the campfire, and he said,
"Because I was in the same case as he is. The only way to save your life is to cut off your ring finger, then sail a boat to where she supposedly lies and say that poem that I just gave you, word for word. Then you drop your ring finger into the water, and whatever you do not look down as it sinks. Just paddle back to the dock calmly. If she accepts your offer, the mark on your leg will disappear completely. Also, let me see the mark, quickly."
Charlie got closer to him and propped up his leg on a wooden chair. Reggie examined it and said,
"Okay, remember when I said you had 4 days till she comes and gets you?"
"Yeah," Charlie responded, questioningly.
"Well, you got 3 days left now, because one of the fingers has already faded off. When all of them disappear is when she comes for you,"
Reggie said as he looked Charlie straight in the eyes. "What if we just drive far away from her?" I asked, wondering if there was another way out so Charlie wouldn't have to cut off his finger.
"No, it doesn't work. She'll search the entire world till she finds someone who bears her mark,"
Reggie said as he led us out of his cabin.
"Look, I'm sorry for you, but there's no other way to make this right than to follow the steps I've shown you. Now, if you don't mind, I have to go and help make breakfast."
He then locked the cabin door and left us on the porch as he speedily headed to the dining hall.
"I can't cut off my own finger. I don't have enough strength to do that,"
Charlie mumbled to himself with his head drooping down. "You know what? That Reggie guy's probably crazy for all we know. Let's just ignore it, and if she comes to get you, Jim and I will be there to beat her up," I said with a half-hearted chuckle, knowing that this did not look good.
"You're right, Nick. If I only have 4 days left, then it'll be great to spend them with you guys,"
Charlie said happily, trying to hold back the fear hiding inside of him. "That's the spirit. And now, Charlie, let's go eat some breakfast and then complete some more merit badge requirements. That'll keep your mind off it," I said as we walked into the dining hall. So we went through our different merit badge stations throughout the day until we all met up for dinner at the dining hall, and Jake was there walking around showing everyone in our troop that he had played near the stick that we were supposed to avoid and that he got marked by the girl. He soon came over to us, and though he didn't like us that much, he never gave up an opportunity to gloat. So he came up and said,
"Hey guys, look, I got marked by the girl. I'm not even scared. I bet this whole so-called urban legend thing is a fake."
The three of us looked at the mark that he had on his arm, but it was not the same as Charlie's. It was like the discount version of it. I just replied, "Cool," trying not to get into a fight with him or to prolong the conversation. Jake then walked off, all proudly, acting like he got our respect. "So what, did he just put makeup on to make it look like he got marked?" I asked Charlie and Jim.
I guess so. He probably got it from his mom,"
Jake replied, while laughing. However, Charlie did not seem amused. All this had done was remind him of his dark fate if he didn't offer up his ring finger. We finished eating, and the next day another finger imprint disappeared, and the same thing with the day that followed, until it was the last day, until she was supposed to come. The whole day, Reggie kept glancing over at Charlie while he was trying to eat, wondering if he was going to do it. Jake was still going around and acting all tough with his attention-seeking fake mark. Soon, the day turned dark, and Charlie's time began to dwindle down. We used our pocket knives to sharpen sticks, even though our leaders told us not to. We were going to use them to defend our tent, and if she wanted to take Charlie, she would have to take all three of us. So, that night, everyone was settled down in their beds, but not us. We were prepared for her to unzip the tent and try to grab Charlie. The wind that night was howling, and the trees were being shaken like a dog.
"I just wanted to say it before I die. I love you guys,"
Charlie said, with tears in his eyes, knowing that he wasn't going to last much longer.
"Right back at you. And hey, everything's gonna turn out fine. This guy might be crazy for all we know,"
I replied, trying to keep Charlie's spirits up and also to take my mind off of what was soon going to happen.
"Guys, look,"
Jim replied in a quivering voice as we looked through a crack in the tent zipper. We could all hear someone weeping outside of the tent, and it mixed with the wind, which turned it into a howl. "What do you see?" I responded hesitantly, not really wanting to know, but needing to know what it was.
"It's a blackish figure wearing a brown sack-looking type of clothes. I think it's her. Her skin's so pale and she's sopping wet,"
Jim described as he began to shake in fear. Charlie was on the verge of crying, but I put my hand over his mouth and calmed him down.
"Is she coming in our direction?"
Charlie asked in a shaky, trembling voice.
"Sort of, but she's headed to someone else's tent. She's looking inside of it, and now she's going to the next one and doing the same thing. She's looking for whoever has the mark. Hey, Nick, come and take over watching her. I can't stare at that hideous, distorted thing anymore."
"I guess I can do that, but stay close to Charlie," I responded. But as soon as I did, we heard screaming coming from one of the other tents. "Someone must have seen her," I said, as I quickly looked through the crack to see what was happening. And as soon as I did, I saw Jake on the ground outside of his tent.
"Hey, didn't Jake have that fake mark that he put on himself?"
Charlie asked with a hint of eagerness. "Yeah, he had that one on his arm," I replied, wondering if she mistook Jake's mark for Charlie's. We then all heard him scream out for help, and I looked closer, and I couldn't see the girl, but Jake was there, and he was as scared as a cornered animal. The girl let out a wretched, high-pitched scream that made all of our blood run cold. Everyone in the entire camp could probably hear it, and I looked away out of fear. I quickly looked back, and Jake was gone. All that was left was her mourning cries that grew fainter and fainter until they were lost in the wind, The wind settled down to where nothing could be heard outside of the camp. It was just a dead silence. No matter how hard they searched, they never found Jake's body, and his dad quit being the scoutmaster after that. Also, the summer camp had to be shut down for a while after the incident, but has since reopened. Charlie, Jim, and I are still great friends, and to this day, we can't believe what went down that night. We never told a soul what we saw because we were afraid of people calling us crazy. Since then, I have always wondered what other urban legends are real, just like this one, but I guess you can only know if you have experienced them firsthand. All I can say is, don't test their limits, or you might find yourself being dragged out of your tent in the middle of the night.